I will just say that I wish I could do option parsing in Python the same way you do option parsing in Ruby. And then we can move on.
Don't worry, mate. We've all been there. Happens to the best of us. You just got to push through. I have accidentally put down the follow-up. Let me pick the follow-up back up.
Pick the follow-up up.
So, I am struggling with timelines in my head. The last 2 episodes have kind of blurred together in terms of some of the feedback we've had and some of the things I've said. What I'm about to say, I may have already followed up on. I honestly don't remember. I even listened to the episode on the way home from work, and I just didn't pay attention. There's no nice way of putting this for myself. So we spoke about The Apprentice and the sort of difficulties they were having with the weapon. I have since had a chance to quickly speak to Mark, and he sort of gave me a bit more info on what was going on. So it wasn't belt tension. It was a large amount of internal problems, which, by the looks of it, like half the pits worked on at some point during the weekend.
It's a very communal sport.
It really is. And the main reason I'm bringing this up is that Mark is apparently one of the few people that actually reads the show notes, and noticed that I, as a throwaway joke, when talking about how I don't understand browning out, just put, doesn't happen to servos. It does happen to servos. It happens to all electronics. I promise to be more rigorous in my terrible joke making in future. So anyway, so I'm like, isn't like I'm throwing shade at people for not using servos. It's kind of the opposite. It's self-deprecating, but still wrong. That's like cheating and losing. It's the worst combo. And then my second correction, amendment, whatever, is just a little note on Clause 2 and the drive problems they were having. They were caused, apparently, by the motors basically just being really old. They've been running motors that we typically run on 3S, on 4S for about a year, and they finally got a little too toasty, a little too unhappy. So that was what was causing some of the sort of slowdown that you especially were noticing through the episode.
Fair enough.
And honestly, those corrections may have been worse than the initial statements. But we're here now.
Got to keep digging.
Did you have anything that you said wrong maybe to correct?
I don't think so.
Actually, I've just realised that me saying that is going to make you think that you got something wrong that I haven't told you about.
Yeah, now I'm worried. What have I said wrong? I mean, everything I say is gold.
If there were a cutting room floor for Spinnerproof, it would only be things that I've said. Everything Sam says and does stays in.
That is so far from the truth. I think, right, this is just going to be a bit weird and a bit awkward, but I think it's important. Well, for me, it's important to talk about. I have friends and family in Australia, and Australia is currently on fire. Like, the entire country is on fire. And it's just mad to me. The people I know there are fine, but obviously lots of people are not fine. And even though they're not necessarily hurt, it's still, or hurt or particularly in danger of the fire being a direct threat to them. Like, because my cousin and stuff like lives in the middle of Sydney, like it's very unlikely that the fire is going to get there and do anything, but it's still ludicrously hot. I think the other day it was like over 50 degrees Celsius, which is, I'm going to translate this for the Americans because I think it's important to understand how hot it is. That's 122 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's just insanely hot and uncomfortable. And the other thing that I've found from the people that I've spoken to there as well is that it's just a horrible experience as well. Like, Australia has been on fire for like 3 months now. Like, this is not a particularly new development. It's on fire and has been for a while, and it's just going to keep getting worse. This is still near the beginning of fire season, and it's already worse than they've ever seen it before. And so there's a lot of people who are obviously losing their homes. There's a lot of stress. It's a scary and horrifying place to be at the moment. And I think, people are finding that hard. I think there's a big toll on people's mental health. A lot of uncertainty around what's happening and their futures and all that kind of stuff. There's just so much going on. I'm not sure how much there is that can be done by individuals internationally. If you know people from Australia or are affected by it in any way, reach out, talk to them. They might not be in any immediate danger from the fire, but like I said, there are other effects of living in a country that's in this state at the moment. Talk to them, make sure they're okay, and be there for emotional support as much as anything else. And then I guess on a more political note as well, wherever you live, if you can vote for people who vote for a government that understand climate change and are willing to do something about it. It's sort of shocking, the state of the ostensibly civilized world at the moment with our current leadership in the UK and in America and in various other places around the world. It's just, and Australia as well, like these governments that just aren't doing enough about climate change and about the environment. And so, I don't know, this is just my plea to everyone. I imagine that I'm just, preaching to the choir with with you guys, I imagine, but like, at the very least, vote and just, try to make the world a better place. But yeah, I don't know. It's just, like, if you look at pictures of what's going on in Australia, it's just terrifying and horrifying. And I can't believe that it's happened. And I can't believe how little of it I sort of see. I know I'm in a little bubble that doesn't really get affected by the news very much, but you'd think if an entire continent was on fire for 3 months, it would have penetrated more than it has.
I think that's probably true for a lot of people. It's something that I became aware of as a thing that was happening maybe a month ago. But even then, the scale of it was never really put across. And I'm someone that follows the news, not avidly, but almost accidentally, purely in my quest for content throughout my day. I'm on the Reddit front page, I'm wherever. And it took so long to even penetrate there. I don't know if that's an issue of just the kind of natural biases we have towards more domestic news, but even then I feel like that usually just means the English-speaking world. I wonder if it's maybe more an issue of there is no way to get a sense of scale on this, apart from it's big.
The thing is, so the fires that are happening there dwarf everything. They just dwarf any other sort of out of control forest fire or bushfire, anything like that you can think of. Like, people were sort of going mad about how much of the Amazon was burning a little while ago. Australia dwarfs it. Like, I'm not kidding when I say the entire continent is on fire. Like, it's insane. The entire East Coast, especially, which is where so many people live. There's a huge population density there, and it's just the whole thing's on fire. The smoke from the fire is affecting people in New Zealand, and New Zealand is so far away from Australia. You sort of don't realise how far away it is. I forget what the equivalent of, like, the different distance between, like, America and England or something stupid like that. It's just it's not like the channel between England and France. It's a huge distance, and the smoke from the fires is affecting people in New Zealand. It's the whole country's on fire. It's just mad. Anyway, I don't know what else I can say about it, really. I wish I could sort of say something and do a call to action that I know would help, and I can't. There's just not a lot. I just wanted to vent about it, basically, and I think it's important enough to vent at the beginning of the episode before people turn off. So I think I'm done venting, so we can move on to lighter topics, I think.
And I'm now trying to work out how to do that.
Well, I can move us on. Right, so the last episode, we released that on YouTube, and we got a few comments of, like, positivity, being like, oh, this is great, please release all of your episodes on YouTube. And it's prompted me to want to ask a question that I think I may have asked before, but I'm going to ask it again, which is, how do people listen to Spinnerproof? Because I don't feel like I understand how people listen to us. And I find the ways, like, listening on YouTube has always baffled and confused me. So I'm just curious. So, like, there are lots of ways, obviously. It's like you can go to spinnerproof.com and there's a little play button and stuff. And I've put that there on the website, never expecting people to use it. That's sort of there as a way of, like, listening to, like, 5 or 10 minutes as a preview to see if you like it. And the expectation for me was that then people go, oh, this is quite cool. And then they'd go to, like, iTunes or something and subscribe to the feed in their podcast app on their phone, which is the way I listen to a podcast, and therefore the way that I assume everyone does. But yeah, I get the impression people don't. So this is a call to everyone who's listening. Contact us somehow, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, leave a comment on a YouTube video.
Facebook?
Well, some of us are on Facebook.
Oh wait, yeah, I do post this on Facebook. I've just remembered that.
just wherever, Discord, wherever else this gets, just anywhere you can get in contact. I want to know how you listen. I want to understand. Do you use an app? Do you just use the website? Do you dream of the days that we'd release the whole thing on YouTube? If you do listen on YouTube, I'm just curious, like, because when you turn the screen, do you pay for YouTube Premium so that you can have the screen off on your phone? Are you sat at a desk listening on YouTube? What are you doing while the YouTube thing's playing? I just don't understand. It's all so mad to me.
I am someone who will listen to podcasts on YouTube, but damn, is it an inconvenience?
I just don't, yeah. Anyway, that was my request. I will also say that you cannot give me too much detail. Go nuts, explaining in great detail how you listen. Like, I'm genuinely curious.
Oh, that's asking for trouble in the best way. Keeping it on the topic of YouTube and podcasts that are on YouTube specifically, we did a little guest appearance on Robocast.
We did.
It was a very good episode. We enjoyed recording it greatly, and Sam is the worst. This Sam, not their Sam. Their Sam's lovely. But Sam, you are the worst.
What have I done?
Absolute
to wrong
worst.
You, man? What could I possibly have done?
So, some people may have listened to that episode already, some people may not have. If you haven't, then you should. And you should listen right to the end. You should listen beyond the small silence for a little bit of bonus content that Sam decided to do, in which, among other things, he decided to direct us to a URL.
No, right, no. What do you mean? Other Sam asked me to do the Spinnerproof outro, right? So that's what I did. I just put a different URL in rather than spinnerproof.com.
So Sam, read out a URL. And of course, nobody would check what that URL goes to. That's something only a crazy person would do. So I did. Sam, would you like to tell everyone what that URL directed towards?
Well, I can tell you the URL if you want.
That is the correct way to do this, yes.
Right, so I directed people to youtube.com/watch?V=D-Q W4W9 G X C That is the URL I read out. I think that people should take the opportunity to go and find out for themselves where that leads before Ryan spoils all of my fun. I honestly can't tell you how happy I was when I heard that you had gone to that URL.
So, as we record this happened last night, and I think I went through a full half hour of emotional turmoil, where I was both impressed, disgusted, and sad. You are the worst. There is no other way of putting this. The absolute worst.
I feel like we've had our fun. We should tell people where that URL goes.
No, they're going there themselves now. I may put it in the show notes for convenience. I haven't decided yet.
Well, whatever you do, I will say that it is worth going there. It's a great video.
If you say so. You know what else is a great video?
Bugglebots?
Heat 5, yeah.
Heat 5. So many heats.
Well, heat's no more.
Oh, this was the last heat, wasn't it? Blimey.
Yeah. I have a theory.
Do you?
I think the heat order was put together purely to build up the Last Chance Rumble in the perfect way. We started off with a wedge and a spinner. You're like, yeah, that's reasonable. We then have a wedgie axe and a spinner. You're like, yeah, that's reasonable. You then had a crusher and a spinner. It's like, yeah, that's reasonable. And then heat 4 hits. 2 spinners, one of which is daedalus. Like, okay, this is no longer reasonable. And then at the end of this heat, we've added 2 verts to the mix. And the whole thing finally becomes the ridiculousness that we've been promising.
Oh, it's so exciting.
Should we get into some fights and robots?
I think so. So we can start, as the episode started, with Mini Spinny versus Catalyst.
And I've just seen my own spelling of Mini Spinny.
I know.
I'm not proud.
Not only is it wrong in the first instance, it's wrong in a different way later on in the notes.
Oh no.
Minny.
If that's not how it is spelt, it should be, okay?
And then later on, Miny.
Oh dear.
You teach, Ryan. You teach.
That's the problem. I'm now working with kids of an age where they don't know the correct way to spell things. We would accept those spellings. Anyway, Catalyst. I have so much love for Catalyst. Not as much as I have for Dwayne, but I have a lot of love for Catalyst. My affection for front hinges is very well known, and this is by far the funniest looking front hinge we have.
Funniest looking? Why?
The eye placement on Catalyst is perfect. It transforms that machine from very sturdy, very durable wedge to derpiest face in existence. We've all been talking about Annie's face, and that is horrifying. The face of Catalyst, possibly even more so.
I feel like you and I have taken very different things out of looking at this robot.
What have you taken from it?
I just think this just looks like a very, very designed and very finished robot. You know, like this is clearly something that someone's put a lot of time and effort into, and they've made sure to refine it as well. And I think it's great. I really love it.
Yeah, it's a very sleek sort of form factor. It's designed very well from a competitive standpoint. It's put together very well. And then it has those eyes.
Yeah. The ideal mix.
Catalyst is, as I suppose you've said there, so well shaped to take some big hits. And you feel like Mini Spinny is an opponent that will allow it to show that off.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it turned out not to be. But the potential was there for this to be a really long fight.
Yeah, I mean, I think it sort of shows just how much power Mini Spinny has in it as well, really.
Oh, this version of Mini Spinny, it is worlds apart from the original. And in nothing but good ways. And I liked the original. I liked the original a lot. This is much less weapon-focused, and I think just generally a more sort of pragmatic design, almost. And it's almost, I don't know if it's kind of falling into a fourth school of undercutter design, because it's not quite the same principle as Annie. It's still got the weapon ahead of the drive and the kind of outriggers for stability. But it's then also got that rear section where it's sort of managed to be an undercutter that also has a wedge.
Yeah.
And that rear seems to almost be grounded as well for even more stability.
Yeah, I mean, Mini Spinny is another just fantastically well-designed robot, I think, and having all the space as well at the back of it to just sort of be a wedge that can take a beating and there's not actually anything particularly important under it, I think is a stroke of genius as well. I also, for this fight, particularly like all the little things that he's put on the sides to sort of like remove all the square edges and stuff on the sides of the robot so that the front hinge can't do what front hinges do and just leave Mini Spinny on the side, stacked, as Rory put it.
I'm slightly confused as to why those aren't just a permanent fixture. Because while, of course, in a normal fight, an undercutter cannonballing around probably isn't going to land neatly on its side or whatever, it still seems like there's always that possibility.
I don't know, yeah, maybe. I mean, I think it would have to be a pretty damn perfect landing for that to happen.
It's a situation where the problem is very unlikely to arise, but I also can't see any major downside of having those on there all the time. Unless he really is that tight on weight, which wouldn't surprise me.
I mean, it's also entirely possible that he didn't think of it until he got there and saw he was fighting a flipper, so...
Very true. Unfortunately, this wasn't a fight where we really got to see the best of either of them. Mini Spinny is delivering the big hits that it can deliver, but it doesn't have a chance to also show off the drive, the control, the durability. And Catalyst has kind of shown that it can deflect hits very well, but whatever went wrong internally has kind of cut this short in I was going to say in a disappointing way. I don't think that's really fair, but it is a shame that we didn't get to see more from this fight. Which I guess is another way of saying it's disappointing.
Yeah, when you've got a big spinner and a wedgy robot, you sort of you definitely hope for the 2 or 3 minute fight rather than this short. Was it like less than a minute or something? Was it? Yeah, what was it, about 30 seconds or something? It was way too short.
An intense 30 seconds, but a short fight nonetheless. Fortunately, that was not the theme of the episode.
The driving on Catalyst made what little of this fight there was so much more intense for me. I think Catalyst is well driven insofar as the wedge is always the thing that contacts the weapon, but it looks chaotic in a weird way. It's just because it like turns so quickly, and it always felt like the wedge was brought into the right place at just the last second. It was like, oh no, your back's exposed. Oh wait, no, that's fine. The wedge is there now. It's just like I found that very tense.
Almost has a slight kind of hammerhead shark vibe. It seems to sort of be swinging left and right, just looking for that moment. I guess this once again highlights the strength of the format, that Catalyst has had a sort of freak problem in this fight, and we still get to see them again.
Yeah.
So it'd be such a shame for what is really one of the more unique robots in the field to be gone.
Yeah, if this was like a single elimination tournament, this would be a brutal loss.
What's a more brutal way to go out, though? This or sticking yourself to a wall?
I don't think anyone was sticking themselves to a wall. I think people were being stuck to a wall.
What?
What?
If it's your own onboard magnet that sticks you, then you are sticking yourself.
Well, I feel like we're moving on to Drizzle versus Wee Woo, and I will say that Drizzle put whichever one it was, Wee. So Drizzle put Wee against the wall. This was Drizzle's doing.
But they didn't stick them. They put them there, but they didn't do the sticking. The sticking was a separate issue.
This is a ridiculous distinction you're trying to draw here. This is one of the most mad distinctions you've ever tried to bring up on Spinnerproof. Drizzle stuck Wee to the wall.
We became stuck to the wall.
No, we became stuck to the wall.
Is that not what I said?
Oh, so I was making a joke because we sounds a bit like we.
Oh,
it's like you and I got stuck to the wall, but you know.
I was trying to give out some really important information there as well, and you cut me off.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I think a lot of people have trouble telling the difference between we and woo.
It's not like you've ever cut me off in the past.
Wouldn't dream of it. So the simple way to remember it, carrying on as though you're not there, is that woo is blue. And I feel this is a detail that is missed by so many people, including me, until I was told by Greg.
Such an obvious detail that even the almighty Ryan missed it.
It's the only thing I hadn't noticed in the whole of both series of Bogglebots. Everything else I've been pretty hot on.
Of course.
This fight is up there with K2 versus Maximum Overdrive in terms of ridiculous first round draws. You could put this fight anywhere in the tournament and it would look right.
Mm.
In fact, this matchup, not even just this fight.
Should we consider Drizzle quickly?
Yes, we shall.
Let us sit down with a cup of tea and consider Drizzle.
Should be a mug of tea, really.
What a terrifying robot Drizzle is.
Drizzle, last time around, was scary in the same way that, like, a lion cub is scary. It's like, it could nip you, but you'll probably beat it in the end. Drizzle that can self-right is fully grown lion. And that was an unexpected analogy.
Unexpected for everyone involved. Yeah, the self-writing Drizzle is scary stuff, and I believe there's lots of other refinements that have gone into Drizzle this time as well. I really sort of empathized, I guess. I don't know with what Tom was saying about this is sort of like the best version of Drizzle it can be without it being like a fundamentally different robot. You know, it's sort of like this is the same as it was last year, but it's just that everything's being sort of tweaked and refined and perfected, really. And I think that's a really great strategy for, obviously a really great strategy for developing these robots, even the ones with crazy weapons. I think if you give it a couple of revisions and stuff and work on it a bit, you can bring something back that is genuinely sort of scary and more competitive than you would have thought.
It would be really easy to underestimate the work that must have gone into getting Drizzle self-writing.
Yeah.
The geometry of that is going to be quite complex. And then also making sure that disc or that weapon motor has the torque to do it. That must be a mighty fine balancing act.
Yeah, I can imagine that every little change to the robot would sort of change the equations around doing that in surprising ways, I imagine. And yeah, like you said, having the weapon be large enough to actually do it, and then it's got to have enough of a tooth as well, I think, because I think it sort of needs the tooth to kick it that last little bit and stuff like that. It's just kind of, yeah, I think a very fine balancing act to make that self-right correctly.
Drizzle has always been a robot that is capable of just making crowds appear from nowhere. I think one of the biggest crowds we saw of the weekend was when Drizzle went into the test arena to try out the self-righting. I think, as is the way with Drizzle, everyone just teleported from where they were stood at their own pit table to the side of that arena.
Yeah, often without knowing that they'd done it or intending to do it. They just suddenly found themselves there watching Drizzle.
Even some people who weren't even at the tournament, they were the most confused of any. No, that seemingly small feat is just so transformative for the robot.
Indeed.
And then it comes up against Weewoo, which is probably one of the toughest draws it could have got out of this heat.
God, Weewoo is quite the set of machines. And
it is now, of course, a whole fleet of machines.
This is really pushing the definition of like an entry into like a competition for me. Because this is like, for this one, they had 2 wedgie robots that they were using. And then in a later fight, they had a spinner and a grabber. It's like, how many of these, did they have 5 or something? I don't know. Like, they had lots of robots. 4 or 5 of them. And it's like, is this all one entry, really? or is this something else?
I think it was 3 Wiis and 2 Woos in the end. As I understand it, this sort of way of doing things has been allowed for quite a while. It's just that people didn't necessarily pick up on what a good idea it was. We had something similar with the Swarm.
Yeah.
With 5 or 6, however many it was, very different robots. Weewoo, for me, has really refined that idea.
The thing about because the Swarm never really sort of triggered this in my brain, and I think part of it, like, how many of those robots entered a fight? Was it 4 of them?
It was more than half of them. I think that's probably the thing that's tripping your brain.
Yeah, I think it was like in any given fight there were more than half of the robots involved, whereas with Weewoo there's not. There's always less than half of them involved.
I personally think that just adds cool points.
Yeah, I don't begrudge them having done this. Like I said, I think it's a great idea. If you've got the time to build 5 robots, then more power to you and stuff. I think it's and it's leads to great fights like this where they can pick exactly the kind of robot that they want against their opponent and stuff. It's almost in some ways also the purest form of the Swiss Army bot and stuff, where you just switch out the entire thing. But like, I can imagine sort of taking it to an extreme. If we entered 3 robots called Hello There, but they're all different. Like, I don't know.
I don't know where that would fall rules-wise. Actually, that is an interesting point.
Yeah, like it's there's one thing having like broncoing it and having 2 complete robots there, but they're the same thing. And then obviously you've got these sort of cluster bots that have lots of robots, and then they pick and choose the configuration. And then would it be allowed to have 3 robots that are all called the same thing entered as one, but it's not really a cluster bot? It's just sort of 3 full weight robots that you enter. I don't know. It's weird.
I mean, if they don't start attached to each other, are they even cluster bots?
No.
It's all just one big lie, isn't it?
The whole thing is a lie, yeah.
I think that sort of ability to mix and match and pick and choose is one of very few reasons you have to build a cluster. So if that's going to be there as a perk of building a cluster, then yeah, great. More clusters, please. Especially if they're going to be as good as Weewoo.
And as well driven as Weewoo as well.
Oh, exceptional.
I sort of like, this is, I think, the fights they're in is a masterclass of how you drive with a multi-bot like this. Absolutely incredible teamwork in every fight.
And of course, it's a different sort of team lineup this year. You've still got Greg, who has the experience of driving Weewoo from before. Cosmo's off with Daedalus, so they've brought in Dave, who is probably the perfect addition. Experience with a number of robots in general, but particularly has experience with Crackers and Smash. So he knows exactly how to work as part of a sort of 2-part team. I guess we should get into the fight itself if there's any way to cover this whatsoever.
Oh, I don't know what you can say. I feel like both robots, or I say both, all 3 robots were just on top form for the whole fight, really.
It's a clash of big power and big durability. Except the big power also has big durability. We watched this from the pits, didn't we?
This is funny. This whole episode is weird for me because I saw the lineup and I was like, I don't think I saw any of those fights live. And yet there's video evidence of me being in the room. So, like, I definitely did.
In or near the room, but we'll get to that.
No, yeah, in and near. Yeah, maybe we did watch it from the pits on the screen. I honestly can't remember.
I remember this for us just being the pits feed, which didn't quite cover the whole arena, with either Wee, Woo, or Drizzle flying through frame every now and then.
Oh, yeah. And then not quite sure what happened to Wee.
Yeah, it just kind of disappeared from vision completely and never came back. This is the redemption that Drizzle needed.
Yeah.
Especially after how their first fight went last time.
I mean, I don't remember how their first fight went last time, so...
So...
If you were expecting me to contribute to this point, then you're mistaken.
For the benefit of the Sam, in its first fight, it span up, something happened to the weapon and jammed it, causing it to fall flat on its face, before contact had even been made. It's a hell of a way to go. It was a memorable fight for that reason alone, but not the kind of performance you want when you're trying to prove the concept of the machine you've built. I think Sarah said it best at some point in the episode, in terms of, you know, you've multiplied the amount of time they've now had in the arena at Bogglebots by 10.
Yeah. In a single fight. Maybe not quite a single fight, but yeah. So good.
I guess if, obviously one entry had to lose. Not one robot, but one entry. I guess from an entertainment perspective, it's much more fun having Wee Woo in a 3-way to turn it into a 4-way.
Yeah.
And then, oh no, we have to get to it. The ridiculous story of this episode. Oh man. It all starts here. It all begins with Bourbon versus Jay.
Why do you sound so disappointed about this?
Oh, I'm not. I'm not at all. Bourbon, the memes aside, I still absolutely love. I love the intent behind the design and I love the end product. It's a super compact robot. Yeah, it's already a small robot and so much of the actual stuff is packed into an even smaller part of it. And we also have, from Rob, the sassiest green screen pose of the whole series. And that's really what we're after here.
Yeah, screw the robots. Let's just have sassy green screen poses.
We're going to have a whole hour-long special of nothing but green screen footage.
I hope not.
Oh, yeah, you better hope not.
I hope that never goes into the public eye.
He says, bringing it up.
Look, I might cut that.
I thought you might. Have you got anything to say about Bourbon?
I mean, Bourbon could do with a feeder wedge.
Bourbon had a feeder wedge.
No, look, duct taping a bit of stuff on the front of it doesn't count as a feeder wedge.
Bourbon's disappearing wedge is one of the highlights of the series.
I didn't even notice it the first time. It took the replay for me to understand what happened there.
I've gone through the fight multiple times trying to work out where it went. They showed in a replay it kind of slipping between two panels. But it seemed like there were still parts of it above that would stop it falling right through, and then suddenly it's just gone.
It's a magic trick. If only Bourbon could make Jay's wedge disappear in the same way.
That's the ideal.
For my next trick, can you imagine a robot just comes out with like a big cloth and covers up the other robot and then goes, whoom, and it's gone.
I mean, can you even do a count out then? I suppose it classes out of the arena.
Yeah, well, maybe we don't know where it's gone. We have to assume it's out of the arena.
Jay, of course, is the world's first two-wheel drive wedge.
Yep, no one's ever done it before. It's a very innovative idea.
It's about as simple as they come, really, isn't it? It's exactly the kind of build that you would often see someone sort of encouraged to go with as they start out, especially if they want to sort of be fairly competitive out of the gate.
Yeah, I think it's a great little robot because I think even though it is sort of this quite simple idea of two-wheel drive wedge and stuff, I think it's very well executed, and I think it's got a certain charm to it as well because it's obviously very dinky and the whole thing's made of steel.
This fight isn't a very good one to sort of give a sense of scale for either of the robots.
No, they're scaled appropriately to each other, but if you put either of them next to a robot built by idiots, like for example Hello There, then you can see that they are both much, much smaller, much denser.
I was kind of surprised by how cagey this fight was. It seems like Jay is kind of going in for lots of big straight line attacks, which show off the speed that it's capable of, but are mostly missing. And then Bourbon, without the wedge especially, kind of has nowhere to go within that. And it only really gets exciting once Jay slows down a bit and stays a bit more close quarters and just kind of... I was going to say gets picked off, but I'm not sure that's really true. Because it looks to me as though the wheel fell off and then got hit rather than being knocked off.
I don't know. I'm going to assume that he got knocked off. I think in this fight, though, I think you've got a couple of things happening where you've got Bourbon with some drive issues a little bit in this fight, and I think the inexperience from Myra with Jay shows in her driving as well. Like it's not like bad driving at all, but it's also, you know, this is not someone who's got lots of experience driving robots doing it with the missed box rush and stuff like that. So I think between those two things, I think that's sort of what leads to it feeling a bit, like I said, sort of surprisingly cagey. I think if Bourbon had drive, I think he would have been a lot more aggressive with it.
I think the whole point about sort of inexperienced driving shows not because the driving is bad, but because the driving changes, if that makes sense.
Mm.
So Jay has clearly gone in with a strategy of, you know, those sort of big long runs, has seen it isn't working, and sort of, well, what's the next thing I try?
Yeah.
And the next thing was staying a bit closer, slowing down, sort of staying faced up that way, and that proved to be more effective. So I think what you're seeing there is a learning process as much as anything.
Yeah. So this fight ends with Jay losing a wheel, and there's a moment here where, because Jay is quite quick, even just like waggling the stick, it can move out of his circumference, so it won't get counted out. And Myra kind of carries on for a little bit in this fight, which is, you know, very valiant. And I think if you're going to be competitive and stuff, you want to stay in as long as possible. But I think it pretty quickly becomes clear that neither robot is mobile enough to try and to sort of keep this an entertaining fight. And Myra kind of just puts the controller down at that point, which I think is a win for an entertaining fight, if nothing else.
Yeah, we don't want that kind of slow burn petering out as two crippled robots chase each other.
Yeah. And definitely tense moments early on in this fight as well, when Jay's stuck on its side for a moment. You're like, is it going to stay there? Is that going to be the end of the fight?
I completely forgot that happened, and I still don't understand how it got stuck in that position for a moment.
Beats me, man. Physics.
Physics, baby. I'm not doing that again.
Well, you've done it now.
It's okay, I interrupted myself just fast enough.
Well, I think that just about covers that fight.
And that's where things start to get weird.
Yeah, so we get to move on to Jay versus Wee-Woo versus Catalyst.
Or, as I've titled it, Catalyst versus Wee-Woo featuring Jay.
Yes, so there's a definite sense that Myra is oatsing her way through this fight, staying clear.
There's a lot of good stuff to see in this fight, though. The weaponized configurations of Wee-Woo are brilliant.
Oh my goodness me, yeah, they're both incredible.
Spinner Wee is genuinely ridiculous.
I can't believe how much power they've managed to pack in a half-weight robot. It's ridiculous. Well, they're not quite half-weight, but you know, like, it's ridiculously powerful.
Now, I know I started the ceiling count with an agenda, but I'm very pleased to be adding 1 to the ceiling count here, taking it to what I believe to be 3.
None of which are us.
3. You start your own count if you want to. I'm going with 3.
So what have you? What are the 3 so far then?
I actually can't. Oh, Phoenix sort of putting itself into the ceiling. We putting Catalyst into the ceiling, and the third one.
And the third one?
Yeah, the 2 Berg one.
We did not hit the ceiling, and you know it.
We tried really hard, and that should count for something.
Okay. I'll give you 2.5.
Hey, I will take 2.5 because it definitely should be 2. Spinner Wee is kind of taking the limelight with that and many other hits. Grabber Woo, also incredibly effective. In those sort of early stages when Wee is focusing on Catalyst and Woo is focusing on Jay, Wu is just in complete control of that situation.
Yeah.
It's incredibly impressive. Again, we talk about it being mad that a half-weight robot can hit that hard with a weapon. It's equally mad for a half-weight robot to be controlling a full-weight robot that well.
Yeah, I mean, we were incredible robots, and again, incredibly well driven and fantastic teamwork and splitting up and dealing with it all. Just, I don't know. Yeah, it's just another masterclass in doing this. And like you, I'm kind of sort of struggling to comprehend sort of how much power they've managed to pack into these two half-weight robots. It's crazy.
And then we also have Catalyst playing its role mostly by taking the hits so well, but then also moving on, having lost a significant part of the front, to still put in some really good attacks once Wii has gone down the pit.
Yeah, I mean, Catalyst takes a beating and carries on, and then yeah, does really well once the terrifying spinner's gone. I mean, they almost managed to get Wu pinned up against the wall.
Yeah, a couple of times as well.
Yeah.
I guess the error, if we can point to any error on the part of both Wii Wu and Catalyst, is ignoring Jay. Jay has managed to go towards the end of that fight a good 20 to 30 seconds without meaningfully touching an opponent. And I can understand why the two would be focusing on each other, and it is, let's not mince our words here, it is a freak occurrence at the end of the fight that gets us the result we get. But there are many other timelines in which that doesn't get to happen.
Yeah. I think this fight shows a lot about how sort of chaotic and unpredictable combat robotics can be. Like you can have the terrifying and sort of, I was going to say obvious winner, but it's not. But like the terrifying Wii Wu or Catalyst is kind of like the robots that I would have expected to win this. And yeah, just the smallest of mistakes can lead to these unexpected results.
And I guess we have to give credit for what I assume was a strategy to stay out of the way.
I mean, again, if you're there being competitive, I think staying out of the way and letting, being competitive, and you've got another wedgie robot that's going to deal with the spinner for you, then yeah, you absolutely let them do it and try not to get involved. It's another one of the situations where, only idiots who don't know what they're doing would go face first into a spinner when there's someone else that could take them on and stuff. So
think about how many times we could have incremented the ceiling count in this fight.
So many.
This was one of the fights that we got to catch live, wasn't it? At least according to the footage.
So, yeah.
And I think we, along with the rest of the British audience, were very taken with the underdog win. I think it is in our DNA to do that. It makes me wish that I could watch this episode with fresh eyes. This is the only time I've really felt like we've missed out on enjoyment of the series by being there, that once you know the results of this fight, it's a very different viewing experience.
You've missed a trick again, Ryan. The problem you have is that you care too much about this kind of stuff. So like I sort of referenced earlier, as far as I was concerned going into this episode, I hadn't watched a single one. Despite being in the audience for this fight, as far as I was concerned, I hadn't seen any of them. I had no idea who was going to win this fight.
To be fair, I remembered who, but I didn't remember how. So in that sense, I still got to be surprised.
Yeah.
But I do think, apart from those amazing early hits, the strength of this fight, and maybe the strength of the episode in general, is the story. And I kind of feel like I robbed myself of the story.
Well, what's the alternative? To not compete in Bugglebots? I mean...
Worthwhile sacrifice, absolutely. Please take us back for Series 3. We like running into spinners. It's fun.
If there is a Series 3.
No, I don't like to be one to tempt fate, but there should be a Series 3.
It'd be great if there was.
You can't produce what you've produced this time and not do it all again. All those people who've given up half of their year for the last 2 years, just make them do it again.
Equally, we can't make assumptions.
Series 3 will be produced entirely by slave labour.
Oh, God.
Editing team being held against their will.
Oh, poor editing team.
What is this, the next World Cup?
I feel like I should cut that.
I feel like you probably should as well, yeah.
I don't know what that means, but my feeling is I should cut that.
I won't judge you if you do, put it that way.
Right then, we should move on then. We have Mini Spinny versus Bourbon.
Unexpected endings, round 2.
Well, the sort of very opening of this fight, I think, shows what we were getting at with the drive on Bourbon earlier. Like, Bourbon is quick in this fight. Like, no messing around there. Like, across the arena as fast as anyone. It was crazy.
Although small things do look faster than big things travelling at the same speed. What if it's not actually fast at all?
I don't know. I mean, this whole fight felt really quick. I had to, I really struggled to take notes because every time I sort of started typing to note what happened, something else crazy happened.
Yeah.
It was so fast.
I mean, we were fortunate enough to see the aftermath firsthand and the damage to that frame rail.
Yeah.
I assumed it had taken a lot of hits. I assumed it had got there gradually. To do that in a single hit. It's like, yes, aluminium isn't the strongest material in the world. Yes, people are using it for weight reasons more than anything. But, damn, that's ridiculous damage.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what else to say. It's just sort of, it's just as ridiculous to have your robot. What I also love is that it's almost in half, you know? It's almost torn in half, but not quite. And it's the result is quite beautiful, really.
How would we judge this for bingo purposes?
I mean, it's not in half. No bingo boxes can be ticked or crossed or however you mark them, stamped with something. I don't know how bingo
Scrawled over in blood. No, it is unfortunately all still in one piece. Rory did go in for a few more, though, with Robert's permission, so we still got the extra hits that we all so crave.
I mean, he went in, but they were pretty half-hearted in my view. If someone, you know, if someone had given me permission to go in again, I'd be like, right, I'm going to wind up this one. Going to get it in half. I'm going to finish the job.
The way he gave permission was so incredibly casual as well. So, yeah, all right. If you must.
Well, it's already broken beyond reasonable repair, so what more could you do?
Bourbon, I feel like I didn't say it strongly enough earlier. I have so much time for that machine. I feel like it's almost working hard for me not to love it in some ways, because obviously a robot that can't always self-right is basically worthless. Yet still, my love for it remains. I hope that came across sufficiently sarcastic.
I think it'll be fine. I mean, he's got a robot that hasn't been able to self-right ever, and he's got no plans to change that. So,
and that's the kind of stubbornness we crave.
Exactly. That's, you know, if you're gonna have a hill to die on, then you may as well really go stick to it. You know.
That got away from you, didn't it?
Not at all. I don't know what you're on about.
Is it if you're gonna have a hill to die on, it might as well be a really tall hill, or is it if you're gonna have a hill to die on, you might as well really die on it?
I don't know what my brain was trying to do there.
This is the episode of failed analogies.
I think the Lion one was pretty good. I think that one saved it.
It was the beginning of the end, that was.
I mean, it worked. It worked better than my hill to die on thing. You pulled it off.
Why are we competing to out-shit each other? It's like, I'm worse. No, I'm worse.
The thing is, you took a ridiculous analogy and made it work, and then I took a well-established analogy and then utterly failed with it.
Good point, well made.
Point, Sam.
One of the difficulties that we're going to have through this episode, I feel, is complimenting Mini Spinny enough. Because it has just kind of sailed through without any real difficulty.
Oh god, it ends all of its fights in like 3 hits or something. It's I mean, it's no joke, that robot. It's I feel like I definitely underestimated it on the day. Like, it's a terrifying robot.
I don't think there are many people in that room that didn't underestimate Mini Spinny. Again, the story of the episode is Jay exceeding expectations, but Mini Spinny has kind of done the same. Not in the same way or maybe at the same scale, but I don't know, maybe everyone else is sat there going, well, we completely saw this coming. Mini Spinny is an excellent robot and always has been, but as far as I'm aware, we were all pretty, okay, fair play.
Yeah.
So now on to a predictable result. Drizzle versus Jay.
Everyone's favourite.
A fight that everybody wanted to see, including us. We can say that we saw it.
Oh, dear.
Keen observers may have noticed in the background of some shots that at the door there are two faces trying to watch the fight. Those are our faces. We got there just as the arena doors were being shut and we didn't have the heart to ask to be let in.
Oh, I didn't know that we'd be so visible.
It was a very good angle to watch the fight from. Because we had no clue what was happening at the end.
Oh, well, that makes it good, does it? Not being able to see the entire fight makes it a great angle.
Extra tension. It seems it was still a better angle than from the pits, because at the end of the fight, because of course this was in many ways quite close to being a double KO.
Mm.
And a lot of people who were watching from the pits didn't know what way it had gone. They realised the fight was over. They didn't know who had won. So we were kind of met by this stampede from the pits at the end of the fight, all wanting to know who won.
Who won? Tell me who won. I must know. Tell me. Who
And the
won?
only way we could judge was sort of looking at the faces of drivers and seeing who was happiest.
Yeah.
It's a weird fight. It's a good fight.
I mean, it's got everything you want out of Drizzle, really, hasn't it? Drizzling its way around the arena and just flying everywhere, and Jade just being the brick that it was built to be. And then, naturally the fight ends with Drizzle unable to self-right, because that's the way. That's the way these things go.
Is that the default state of Drizzle in your mind?
I mean, they've got an image to live up to. They can't have glorious success every time.
I firmly believe that with the weapon turned off for the whole fight, Drizzle wins this.
Probably, yeah. I mean, Tom is going to be able to outdrive them, right?
Drizzle, in a sense, is a better wedge than Jay is. Jay doesn't succeed by being a wedge. Jay succeeds by being a punching bag.
Been an effective tactic so far.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an effective way to go. And it's got them through some tough fights. Especially this one. But we saw at Robo Nerds, particularly because of the magnets, I think, on Drizzle, it is a machine that has got a lot of drive power.
Yeah, it's hard to push it around.
Even if it isn't actively pushing you around, you're not pushing it around. I mean, geez, even that Sam Elliott guy could drive it well. Who's he? He can't even play bingo. God.
Poor guy.
Who is he? Some guy with a heavyweight? What am I, jealous?
I mean, heavyweights are easy to build anyway, aren't they? Everything's bigger. You can just, there's no fiddliness in them at all.
Oh yeah, you just get some wheelchair motors and attach them to some wood, and you've got a heavyweight.
Yeah, trivial.
That's how they've been doing it for decades.
Absolutely trivial.
Paint it pink, and it's good to go.
Yeah. Should we explain the double KO thing quickly?
Go for it.
Because I feel like I have sort of seen some comments around online. I'm not quite sure why they weren't both counted out. Jay, despite losing a wheel, Jay does move out of its circumference after Drizzle is stuck. And so its count out is like reset, I guess, effectively. So even though it ends the fight largely stationary with a wheel missing for some reason, it did move out of its circumference. So Drizzle was counted out first.
Wheel retention was definitely an ongoing issue for Jay in this heat. I would say that there's another factor at play here with it being a double KO, which is very simply Drizzle stopped first. Drizzle sort of lands in that position, and then Jay is still driving around on two wheels for a couple more seconds. So I think between that and the fact that they are managing to crab walk, it's very firmly not a double KO.
Yeah, I mean, you can't count Jay out at that point, so yeah.
If nothing else, having Drizzle in the 10-way is probably more exciting than having it in a heat final. That is the gift that this fight has truly given us.
Just imagine Drizzle flying over a field of 9 other robots and then clipping all of them.
What I like to imagine is Drizzle inverted, just kind of going along like a... Oh, I don't know the name of... No. Star Wars mono wheel thing. You do reference.
Star Wars mono... What, like Grievous?
Yeah.
Okay. What are you getting at? Yeah, General Grievous.
Well, it's not him. He's on a vehicle.
I don't know what the vehicle's called. I'm not that much of a nerd.
That's a sentence I never thought I'd hear.
I'm not that deep into prequel lore.
Yet we decided to name a robot purely for a prequel meme.
That's entirely different.
Where was I going with this? Yeah, I'd like to see Drizzle just upside down, pinballing around, doing damage that way. That's what I would like to see.
Yeah.
I think it also has the most potential of anyone to do a sort of full kobolting again, which would be good for my count. It's all about the count.
All about the ceiling count, which is currently at 2, yeah? Is that what we agreed upon?
2 point something. That something being non-zero.
What I'm finding frustrating, you know how, like in maths, you got the idea that 0.9 recurring is the same as 1, right? What I'm finding frustrating is I don't think there's an alternative that goes the other way. Like, what I want is like a 0.0 something that sounds like it's bigger than 2, but mathematically is the equivalent to 2.
Isn't that just the idea of something being infinitesimal?
Yeah, but like, how do you express an infinitesimal? Like, I can't give you a number that's like 2 and then some infinitesimal. Because the problem is, as soon as I say that, I've given my game away.
Because I suppose you have to go 2.0000, don't you?
Yeah.
And then something at the end.
Yeah, and I can't say like
it isn't recurring, so yeah.
Yeah, like 0 recurring and then a 1. It's kind of a sort of, that doesn't really make sense.
What if you did, so say you wanted to do something that is technically larger than 2 but equivalent to 2, what if you did 4 minus 1.9 recurring?
I could do that.
It's equivalent, at least.
Yeah, I mean that's the kind of idea that I'm getting at. But like, you know, again, it's just hard to express. The problem is because the great thing about the 0.9 recurring equals 1 thing is that it's kind of subtle in some ways. You can kind of, you know, you can play games about these things being equivalent, but they don't sound at all equivalent, and it's not clear that you're playing a game. Whereas as soon as if I said, and how many, we've got like, you know, 3 minus 0.9 recurring hits, it's like you're playing a game there because you've defined a number in terms of an equation rather than whatever it is, an expression rather than as an actual number. That's the thing. I want to like sneakily give you a number that sounds bigger than 2 but isn't.
Well, I'll let you stew on that for next episode.
Thanks.
Sounds like a you problem, not a me problem. How to piss me off. Why am I helping?
I mean, the way to wind you up is to clearly just to read out YouTube URLs.
I'll be stung once, but not twice.
I mean, you say that. You know, I might still get you again with it.
For the heat final, we have Mini Spinny Mark II versus Jay in a confusing set of tones.
That's not like you at all, with your weird intonation. We have a really great box rush from Jay, which is equally fantastically avoided by Mini Spinny.
I did not notice that.
I thought it was a really funny opening, yeah. Like Jay, proper like straight line, no messing around, straight at Mini Spinny, who just turns right and drives away at the last moment. It's really good.
I'm sure that's really impressive, but when you describe it as turns right and drives away, it does sound quite underwhelming.
No, it's good. Like I think that's a really, really excellent bit of driving there.
That's almost as good as the Star Wars evasive manoeuvres.
No, what, like listing lazily to the left?
Yeah, listing lazily to the left.
Such amazing manoeuvres.
Oh no, he's over there, slightly left of where he was before.
This guy knows some manoeuvres.
I was going to say that this is kind of a fight that happened, but it sounds like that alone was enough for you.
I thought that was a really great bit of driving, and then I just sort of, just as if to sort of show the power. Well, I don't know, as if to show the power that Mini Spinny has, and maybe how I don't know how sort of structurally compromised Jay was at this point, having just fought Drizzle, but like Jay survived Drizzle quite well on the surface at least, and then got pretty effectively torn apart by Mini Spinny.
It's funny because this is the fight where Jay performs as a wedge.
Yeah.
And does so, you know, pretty reasonably. It's the same sort of style of driving that worked in the second half of the Bourbon fight, getting in a bit closer, not going on the big runs and trying to get a sort of big deflection, but staying near, staying faced up and sort of being on the defensive. And that was going really well until the wheels came off again. This time, I think, more inspired by a hit than previously.
Yeah.
Because you're up against an undercutter. That's the kind of thing that tends to happen.
Yeah, and Mini Spinny was able to get around to like the back and the sides of Jay a few times as well. So I expect that there were several hits to the wheels during this fight.
Yeah, you could see the tyres getting kind of shredded up as well.
Yeah.
I just find it interesting more than anything that this is the best defensive performance as a wedge and also the quickest death.
Yeah. Well, I don't really know. I just think it just shows how much power mini spinning has in it, really.
Yeah. Again, you have to put that down to the effectiveness of mini spinny.
Yeah.
We've seen some really sort of big hitters throughout the competition. You think of robots like Phoenix, I suppose Drizzle you'd put in there as well, and Daedalus, who have all kind of fallen to... I was going to say kind of the inevitable weaknesses, if that makes sense. So Daedalus was always going to struggle to remain controlled in an arena where there are parts of the arena that will end your fight. You know, the pit and the out of the arena zone. Phoenix had a sort of problem with invertibility and balance, and that was kind of what cost it. Drizzle obviously has a slight issue with self-righting, mostly fixed, but very much reliant on the weapon to do so, and that was what bit it. So what we've seen instead is the more balanced designs coming through. So the K2s, the mini spinnies, Splody Boy I'd probably put in that sort of realm as well, even though it is a very heavy weapon. So that sort of seems to be... I won't necessarily... Can you really call that a meta at this point?
What, a meta of being balanced rather than ridiculous?
Yeah, essentially.
I don't know. I don't think it's meta in quite the same way.
We're certainly seeing the advantages of moderation when it comes to the weaponry. I'm also generally going to have to remind myself what other spin... Oh, guess what spinner Ryan forgot? Sore Loser. That's the one I was missing. Which, again, not a massive weapon, has a sort of secondary function, thus furthering my point, however badly made it may have been. I guess thinking ahead to the grand final as well, Mini Spinny is a great addition, if only because we kind of already have the finals wedge in Thunderchild. You know, Thunderchild is a robot which is really going to take fights to its opponents, whoever it's up against, and is going to kind of create its own entertainment in the way we saw it in the heat. And when you have a field that is currently at least all spinners and that one wedge, that's a great thing to have.
Yeah.
It's the most balanced a lineup can be whilst only having one non-spinner.
Are you praising the lack of diversity in the field now?
For the final, I think we have got probably the most diverse lineup you could expect. So we do have two undercutters, but they're two sort of very different undercutters. You've got two verticals, but they're very different verticals. It's kind of like having Whiplash and Bite Force in a top four. It's like, yes, they are, broadly speaking, the same weapon type, but you would not group them together in many other ways.
Challenge accepted. I mean, got 4 wheels, wedge thing on the front of it. They're both remote control. That's another thing they've got in common.
This just in from Sam, all cars are the same.
But yeah, well, they basically are.
I mean, you're not wrong.
You've got, some kind of powertrain and then 4 wheels. It's just like boring. There's no innovation anymore.
What we do have is that 6th spot to be decided.
Yes.
And that means we get to look forward to Rumbles. The thing I was saying earlier about the way we've kind of built up to the Rumbles was something I kind of didn't notice was happening. And I do feel like, with hindsight, a lot of us as competitors were hyping up the Rumbles even when the lineup wasn't looking as ridiculous as it does now. So this is the point where we really get to go, oh, this Rumble. Oh, this Rumble's so good.
I'm excited to see it for the first time.
This is the kind of fight where, even though you were there, you can't say you've seen it. There is too much happening.
As well established in this episode, whether or not I was there is irrelevant. I've forgotten it all anyway.
Even for those of us with functional brains, anyone who was there will have seen a tiny percentage of what actually happened.
Yeah. Good replay value, I hope.
Yes.
I'm sure you'll put that to the test.
A little bit. So get hyped.
I have one final note that I just want to say, mainly so that I can use this as the title. The phrase, proper ding-dong, was glorious.
Oh. I'm sorry, but that phrase has been memed too much to be an episode title.
Well.
Because yeeted was all our own doing.
Luckily, or luckily for me and unluckily for you, I'm the one that names the episode.
This is a coup, and I won't stand for it.
You can find the show notes for this episode at spinnerproof.com/episodes/66, and there you can find links to all the stuff we've been talking about. You can also find a link to our Twitter at Spinnerproof, where you can tweet to us your favourite order.